MPs heading back to Ottawa to sit in the House for the first time in 2025. Both the Liberals and Conservatives are holding caucus meetings this afternoon on Parliament Hill. All this, of course, happening during a historic week in the nation's capital, the opening of the 45th Parliament, 2 days of pomp and procedure, starting tomorrow with a secret ballot where MPs will choose the next Speaker of the House of Commons, and then the historic part, a throne speech delivered by King Charles, where he will lay out the priorities of Mark Carney's government. I spoke to the Government House Leader, Steve MacKinnon, about what Canadians can expect. Steve MacKinnon, nice to see you.
It's great to be here.
Congratulations on being the House Leader. I know it's a job you enjoy.
It's a great honor.
We'll see how it goes. So the House has not sat at all in 2025. You're going to be back. You have a very brief period of time with a minority government and a Prime Minister who expects a lot of movement.
Yes.
How do you think this is going to go, and who are you talking to make sure that it functions?
Well, first of all, it's exciting.
Yeah.
And I have been doing my best to reach out to my new colleagues, to returning colleagues, and also to the opposition.
Yeah.
I've had healthy discussions with my Bloc and Conservative counterparts, being as transparent as we can about our objectives. We will have a reasonably focused set of objectives for this session of Parliament, but we do have some things we want to get done. And I do think Canadians expect results. I think Canadians want to put in the rear, without casting blame, Canadians want to put in the rearview mirror these procedural debates and long filibusters that we saw that characterized last fall.
Yeah.
Canadians, I don't think, will have any patience for that. They're going to be very frustrated if we redescend into those things. And so we have, I think, a pretty tightly focused agenda for the House of Commons, and we're hoping it's approved.
And because of that, how do you go about it? So let's take the middle-class tax cut, what the Prime Minister wants done pretty quickly. Do you approach parties and say, are you willing? What are those conversations like?
Well, without revealing timing and form and all of those things that are underprivileged, we certainly want to give them as much of a heads up as possible. Okay. But I don't think it's any secret. We want to cut taxes for Canadians. Yeah. I don't think really there's, frankly, much disagreement about that. And yes, those who are watching us, you will get a tax cut on July 1st. Every Canadian who pays income tax will get a tax cut.
Can you do that legislatively, though?
And that is a priority in this session.
Yeah, and so that is, would you say that's the top priority to get that passed?
Well, no, I think we have another imperative, which is, you've heard the Prime Minister say many times that, we can do more for ourselves as a country than anyone else can do to us. And so we want to get a start on that. We want to put a down payment on that, and we'll be proposing legislative measures that creates one Canadian economy, makes the federal government a partner in creating one Canadian economy, and making sure that we are in a position to expand our ability to do trade with the world, to make more fluid the Canadian economy, to make supply chains
Without getting
stronger.
you into trouble, though, we're not just talking here about federal barriers for interprovincial trade. You're talking about some other piece of legislation. Is that what you're suggesting?
What we're talking about is what we talked about in the campaign. I don't think it will be a mystery to anyone or a surprise to anyone that we'll be making some significant proposals with respect to making the Canadian economy work better.
Okay. One of the things that will look different is that the Conservative leader will not be there as the leader of the official opposition. Does that change the dynamic for you? Does that worry you that he's not going to be there, at least in the immediate, to sort of lead his party?
Well, of course, first, the Prime Minister made what I think was a very significant, symbolically powerful proposal that he would not delay, if that was the wish of Conservatives, calling a by-election, and that is a commitment that he intends to honor. And it was meant as a deposit on goodwill. We do not have a majority in this House. We have a minority. We know that. We do think we have a mandate. But obviously, Mr. Poilievre is a unique presence, and that absence will be felt for some time. Conservatives have said that'll be of short duration, and so obviously we expect him back in the House of Commons soon enough.
What about the NDP? They've got 7 seats. They would like, if not official party status, at least more money and resources. I know that Don Davies has reached out. I don't know if it's directly to you.
Yep.
How willing are you to consider that?
I've spoken to Mr. Davies. Party status is probably not something that's on the table. That's set out in law. 12 seats are required.
You could change it, though.
There are a lot of, well, yes, but again, minority.
Yes, sure.
But, he's advanced several, I think, very, very constructive ideas, respectful of the traditions of the New Democratic Party. These are things that I cannot decide on my own. Yeah. But we've taken very, very careful notes, and and we'll continue to work on those.
The first job on Monday, of course, is to get a new speaker elected. There are different names floating out there. Is Liberal caucus choosing, do they have free choice? Is there someone that the Liberal cabinet prefers? How should we, what should we watch for on Monday?
Well, it's a secret ballot.
I know that.
And members exercise, in my experience, exercise that franchise very seriously. They take very seriously the speeches that are made on the floor of the House of Commons. It's quite unique that we spend a day to select the person that will preside over our deliberations. I know members from all sides will be paying very close attention to what those candidates say.
Would you like to see a Liberal in that job, though?
I think we're going to have a secret ballot, Rosemary, and we're going to see what happens. It is a minority parliament. Yeah. There are several candidates, a couple from the other side of the House, I know, and so we'll see how that works. It's a preferential ballot. Sure. It's really hard to make predictions.
And then, of course, on Tuesday we get the throne speech with the King delivering that. How important is it, do you think, that he is coming to do that, to deliver sort of the government's agenda with all the symbolism and history that entails? I
think it's significant. And I don't think Canadians should underestimate its significance. I think the King will have, without knowing what he's going to say, I have no doubt that he will want to send his own personal message to Canadians. And in return, I think what we're doing is recognizing our parliamentary system, is recognizing our roots in the British Isles and, of course, France, and always in respect of our Indigenous peoples. And so we're going to, I think, enjoy that day, and it'll be one for the history books.
Yeah. Would you expect, I mean, it's written by the Prime Minister's office, and he delivers it. Mm-hmm. How much of that message do you think is going to be about not just the government's agenda, but also about Canada and its sovereignty, something that has been obviously a conversation these last months?
Well, the government doesn't need a throne speech to be unambiguous about that.
Yes.
And we will continue to be unambiguous about Canada's sovereignty. Canada's destiny will be chosen by Canadians through Canadian institutions, like the great institution that is the Parliament of Canada. And so having all of those things come together with all of the ceremony in the institutions of our Parliament, I think is a day that Canadians will remember.
The Reform Act will be voted on Sunday afternoon by caucus. The Liberal Party has never voted to accept it. There is conversation happening with caucus members now who feel, I think, a little PTSD from the way it happened with Justin Trudeau and want to know that there is an option. What is your view on whether the Reform Act is needed at this moment, and are you prepared to live with it if they decide, this is something we want to choose?
Well, these are caucus deliberations, so I must be very respectful.
They haven't happened yet, though. I'm asking you hypothetically.
Of the privacy of those. Those measures are required by law. Every caucus of a recognized party must take them up. We will do that, as we have in the past. Do it appropriately. I think members will have made an
What is your view, though?
An informed judgment on that. Look, my view is irrelevant. 170 people are going to.
But you're going to get to vote too, no?
I absolutely am. But my vote, like all others in caucus, is a secret. Process.
Okay, let me go back to just how you're going to make this minority parliament work in a very brief period of time. What has the Prime Minister told you about how quickly he wants things done? Because he seems quite aggressive, and how daunting a task is that for you?
Well, it's very refreshing. Let me just say this. Canadians have elected a Prime Minister who, look, I think it's wonderful to watch. We see in real time the very, very clear ideas and vision of the Government of Canada as embodied by our Prime Minister. Very proud of those priorities. I think many of them needed. Clearly, the United States and the trade issue is one that commands our respect. But there are a number of other fundamental things about our economy, about housing, about the institutions of the federal government that need attention. And Mr. Carney has focused our attention on those, has made no bones about the urgency and the importance of this work. And so we're going to get at it.
Does it worry you, though, that someone who's never done this before, doesn't understand necessarily Parliament perhaps as well as you, is going to come face to face with the reality of you can't actually work as quickly as you think you can when you're dealing with the public service and parliamentary procedure and other parties? Well,
I don't think anyone should underestimate. This is a person, Mr. Carney, who has experienced
Sure.
the federal government, the federal system of government, the parliamentary system of government in Canada and in the UK, a very noisy democracy. So I don't think he underestimates the obstacles or the challenges of governing in a democracy that lets in so many diverse voices. I think he accepts that. I think he's very, very confident about the messages that he wants to send, and you've seen him do that repeatedly. I think he'll do that in Parliament. I suspect Mr. Carney will turn out to be an excellent parliamentarian.
Okay, well, we'll see. Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
King Charles set to open Parliament with a throne speech in Ottawa on Tuesday. That speech will, of course, outline the Liberal government's priorities for this session and this sitting. What kind of message will they send? Let's bring in our Sunday Scrum. Émilie Nicolas is a columnist with Le Devoir in Montreal. Catherine Levesque, parliamentary reporter for the National Post in Ottawa. And Gary Mason, a columnist for the Globe and Mail, and he's in Vancouver. I want to talk about both things, both the King and then the content, the substance of the throne speech. Gary, I'll start with you. What do you make of the fact that the King is coming to do this? Only the third time in history, his first visit here as king. How significant is that, do you think, for Canadians?
Well, I think for some Canadians it's a big deal. For some other Canadians, it's not a big deal, depending on where you live. But I mean, I think it certainly is I think it was a good coup for Mark Carney. As a fresh prime minister to get the King to come over. I mean, it shows that the power and influence that he has, beyond Canada and around the world. It shows the power of his Rolodex. I'm sure he has a relationship with King Charles that he called on here. So I think it's important, and I think it's intended also to send some sort of message about our sovereignty and to Donald Trump. And I'm sure for Donald Trump it's going to be a difficult, thing to watch if he does watch it, because you have a real king here, and he's a wannabe king, so he's going to be coveting that crown that Charles will be wearing there, I'm sure. So, but I think it's going to be I expect, Rosemary, a very cautious speech. I mean, the king doesn't want to get caught up in any kind of controversy, so I'm sure it's been heavily vetted by the palace and to make sure that he's not saying anything that's going to get him into any trouble.
Yeah, if it does nothing else, though, it demonstrates our parliamentary system and how it is just different from that place than the United States.
Sure.
So it will just do that at least. But Émilie Nicolas, obviously there are people who don't really care that this is happening. But it is interesting nonetheless that the Prime Minister requested it and that the King is coming to do it.
Yeah, there's people who don't really care. I live in a part of the country where there's a lot of people who are irked by it beyond just not caring. And so it's been the subject of debates in the newspapers here over the last couple of weeks since it's been announced. And I think it's because there is basically a double meaning to the presence of the King. He's here as the King of Canada, obviously. And so Canada is a constitutional monarchy, and this is, as you just mentioned, our parliamentary system and how it works. It's also that Canada, as a history, is basically a counter-revolutionary force that has chosen to stay within basically the British Empire and slowly, step by step, evolve and find ways of working together from that, which contrasts with the history of the U.S. Right. But it's also because of that the King symbolizes our continuing belonging to well, now it's called the Commonwealth, but really also just the British North America Act is how we were created. And especially for French Canadians, some First Nations, depending on where people are at and where they sit politically, it's when I reach the French Canadian newspaper, the fact that this is a reminder of Canadian sovereignty rather than the opposite of that, basically our lack of sovereignty, is so there's all of those opinions, all of those ways of reading it is out there, and obviously all of this goes over the head of a person like Donald Trump if he's the reason this show is made. And so I think in terms of the parts of the country where this is not sitting well, I think the content of the speech is going to be really important in terms of if was this all worth it? I guess is the questions are people left with, and this is what we're going to be looking for when we listen to the speech on Tuesday.
Sure, and we would certainly expect the king to deliver part of the speech in French. He speaks French, as did his mother, and so part of it will speak directly.
More than Mary Simon, yes, and so that's also the irony of it that a lot of people have been pointing out.
Yeah, and also that will be very easy for him. Catherine Levesque, what do you make of the fact that he's coming and that he's doing this?
Well, one of your previous guests actually said that everyone will be watching, whatever your opinion on the king is. I mean, everyone will have an opinion on him. And, the Canadians will certainly be watching, but also the U.S. will be watching. And, around the world, it will make news. It will make headlines. Look, I think it will be, I don't think the speech from the throne in itself will make a lot of news. I'm told that there actually won't be very many surprises in it. I mean, the government has been very consistent in what they want to do with their mandate letters. But what I think it will be interesting to look at is, so usually the Governor General or the representative for the king always sometimes says a little something before they read the throne speech. In 2019, you might remember Julie Payette talking about space and now how we're all part of the same spaceship. So, I would expect maybe the king will have some personal comments. Obviously, I don't think he'll say things like Canada is not for sale, but he might find a more elegant way of saying it, a more. So I'm sure he will have a very carefully crafted speech. It will be very interesting to watch how far he goes in his message that Canada is a separate country. So that's really what I'm going to be looking for.
I don't even know that he needs to say something. I just wonder if just the present says it and whether he needs to go down that road, because certainly I don't think anyone wants him to create any sort of diplomatic faux pas. But
no, for sure. And I know some British ministers are saying, the king should not be involved and, it should not create problems for them. But yes, I mean, he will have to say something. But you're right. I mean, just the fact that he is there sends a very strong message, for sure.
What about the content, Gary? Catherine's right. This isn't going to be anything that we haven't heard before. It should be largely those 7 priorities that the Prime Minister laid out in that one mandate letter. But still, it is a significant moment in the Prime Minister's political career because now the clock starts on him actually getting this stuff done.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, and just back to Catherine's point, I mean, I don't think that I know he's not going to touch the 51st state comment or anything like that. I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing that is kind of kryptonite, and he is going to stay as far away from that as possible. And as I say, the palace will have vetted this speech to make sure there's nothing that ignites a controversy. It's the last thing that they want. And as for the speech itself, it as you say, Rosemary, it's just going to be kind of a version of the mandate letter. Yeah. And I think, for Canadians that weren't paying attention and didn't, focus a lot of thought on what those mandate letters said and what the priorities of this government are, I think it's going to be good for them to hear it. The mandate letters in themselves were kind of unusual because they didn't set, specific tasks for the ministers. They set out the 7 priorities of this government. I think it's a really interesting way to go about it. And I like it, rather having 7 big tasks for the government to accomplish rather than 240 or whatever it was under 280 under Justin Trudeau. I just think it's good because, I mean, those 7 areas that he's outlined, those are all big, complicated files that all the ministers are going to have a role in bringing to fruition. So, I think it's I think it's going to be a pretty straightforward speech and no surprises, and it's going to just be, this is where we're going, and it'd be interesting to see how it's all framed.
Well, and see how he reaches out to the rest of the country, perhaps Western Canada in particular. Okay, I'm out of time, but thank you all very much for spending part of your Sunday with me. Emily Nicolas, Catherine Levesque, Gary Mason. We'll see you all soon. Thank you.